Now, if you ever wanted to know exactly what happens to the resources we dig up and send around the world, you're about to find out. This is a fascinating insight into the world's biggest car manufacturer, where they pump out a new car every 18 seconds. But they couldn't do it without us. Australia makes billions of dollars out of this deal, but our Asian partners make much, much more than that. So the question is, are we getting value for money? And would a mining tax make any difference? David Eccleston has this exclusive report.
It could be a scene from Terminator. High-tech robots, synchronised, dominate the production line. Flat steel is cut, stamped, welded with pinpoint accuracy. It's mind-blowing.
If you buy a Hyundai car, then you buy a piece of Australia.
You've probably never given it a second thought, but the chances are when you buy a brand new car, it began its life here in the Pilbara, Western Australia, one of the richest forms of iron ore on Earth. And we're going to show you how in just 6 weeks our resources will return home packed on a ship full of brand new cars.
Our iron ore is a building block for the car industry.
Mark Eaglesham runs the Tom Price mine for Rio Tinto, where 800 staff work 2 shifts, 24 hours a day, every day of the year. Last year, the total export of iron ore was $30 billion worth, almost 15% of Australia's total exports. It's our most precious commodity.
Iron is the base constituent in steel, so everything that we use that's made of steel at some point has had its origin probably in the Pilbara. So whether it's the cars we drive, the cutlery we use, anything made of steel, anything you can imagine.
At an average price of $140 a tonne, we're ripping it up in staggering volumes. 100,000 tonnes are blasted, put through the crusher and transported by road train to the coast for export every day. The mining boom arguably pulled Australia out of recession. But when will the bonanza come to an end?
For us, there are billions of tonnes of resource in the Pilbara, iron ore resource.
Current estimates suggest Australia can lunch off the massive iron ore deposits for the next 40 years. So the idea we could run out one day and have nothing left for the generations to come, not possible.
Certainly not in the foreseeable future. Not something I can imagine anyway.
So we followed our resources more than 8,000 kilometres to Dunjing, South Korea, where Australian resources, 200,000 tonne of iron ore, will help create 200,000 Hyundais.
If we don't have a support from Australia, then actually this project cannot, it would be nonsense.
An Australian ship this size docks here once a month. Yu Chul Wu is the president of Hyundai Steel. Hyundai, the only car company with its own steel mill. It's here the efficiency of the Asian automotive giant kicks into gear. So you have 3 enormous suction caps, like vacuum cleaners, that
right.
Suck it all up simultaneously.
That's right.
Our iron ore travels 35 kilometres by conveyor belt to one of 6 space-age storage domes, each big enough to park 2 jumbo jets.
It's more than gold, it could be a diamond.
It could be a diamond.
Yeah, it could be a diamond.
It's that important to your production.
That's correct, sir. We get resources from all of Australia, from Port Hedland, Mackay, and even Newcastle.
Phil Koo is in charge of production, 8 million tonnes a year. And better than anyone, he understands how important Australian iron ore is to getting the job done. Without steel, the entire car industry grinds to a halt.
We depend on over 60% of resources from Australia.
Without Australia's cooperation, you couldn't produce as many cars.
It is unthinkable.
And this is where it happens. the main blast furnace where Australian iron ore and coal turn into metal. It's 1,600 degrees and will run continuously for 25 years. Each of these rolls weighs 25 tonnes. They're delivered direct to the assembly plant. This is where hundreds of robots take charge, a symphony of highly mechanised precision. A two-day turnaround from raw materials to rolling off the line. And we haven't been phased out completely, at least not yet. Final assembly and quality control still requires a human touch on the Hyundai i45 production line. This i45 sells for about $30,000. And remember, the iron ore to make it costs just $140. So, are we shortchanging ourselves? Are we offloading our precious resources too cheap? It's a debate that's got the entire mining industry offside.
It could be your job. Or your electricity bill.
The mining super profits tax was political suicide for Kevin Rudd. He wanted more profit to stay in Australia and let the mining industry handball the price hike overseas. Would adding more tax backfire, with consumers here ultimately picking up the tab?
I don't mind whether you levy the mining tax, but it will again create another price increase.
So Hyundai would be unhappy with any increased tax because it would drive up the cost to consumers.
That's right. Finally, always the consumer pays.
President Yang is the CEO of Hyundai globally. 2 years ago, Hyundai sold 45,000 cars in Australia. This year, they'll sell 80,000. But that's still well short of the absolute minimum, 300,000 needed to build a profitable factory down under. So the numbers don't add up.
Yeah.
It might be a nice idea to set up a big fat manufacturing base in Australia, but it's never going to happen.
John Cadogan is a mechanical engineer and an automotive industry expert. He consults to the Hyundai Motor Company.
We can't compete on a manufacturing level with China, South Korea. It'll never happen.
It's the biggest car factory on earth. 35,000 workers here at Ulsan plant in South Korea. And this is the end of the line. Last year they made 1.5 million Hyundais, over 4,000 a day, 200 an hour, one every 18 seconds.
Up close it blocks out the sun. It's a floating car park with 6,000 spaces.
When these cars hit the dock in Fremantle, Aussie consumers will pay a 14,000% markup. While our resources come home, the lion's share of the massive profit they generate remains overseas.
Kevin Rudd had a point, because if we don't spend the money from our resources wisely, when the boom's all over and the resources are gone, all we'll have in Australia is big holes in the ground.
Just amazing how that massive puzzle all comes together and how it all starts right here. That was David Eccleston reporting from South Korea.